What's up everyone, Omid from CodeLab here, and welcome back to the third video in our React series. This one will be on using state in React. So one of the great things about React is that it actually makes it very easy to track state management. So state management is essentially an issue that pops up when you use pretty much any framework or really just do plain web development, which is when I want to show variables on my page, what happens when those variables change? Like, should the entire page suddenly refresh? Do I have to refresh that one little element that has that variable because now I have to tell it hey, the variable's changed? Because when you first render a web page, when you tell it that I have a variable that represents the value of 3, if that value changes, the page has already been rendered. Your DOM and all of those HTML elements have already been rendered by your browser. So it doesn't know that the variable might have changed in the JavaScript logic underneath the hood. So it's not going to render if I print out 3 as my num, and then inside of this function, when the button is clicked, I change num to become 4. It's actually not going to change. So right here, if I do click me, num is now equal to 4 in my JavaScript code that's running on Chrome underneath the hood. But the HTML is not going to change because the HTML has rendered once and it doesn't know that it needs to be re-rendered. So in plain HTML and CSS, you would have to handle this yourself. But in React, they have a super nice and easy to use feature called useState that takes care of this issue for us. So inside of here, we wanted to write another import statement to get access to this feature. So this feature is called useState. So we are going to say import useState from React. So it's just one of the default things that comes with React, this feature and functionality called useState. And I'm just going to get rid of num right here. And all that we actually need to do is write this one little line of code right here that says const count set count is equal to useState 0. Okay, so count is now our new num variable, so let's replace that with that. So now that our code actually compiles, and let's sort of walk through what this means. So this line actually creates 2 variables in one. If you guys are familiar with object-oriented programming, like in C++ or Java or whatever, we have essentially created a getter and a setter method. Except they are just regular JavaScript variables. So this one here on the left in blue called count, this is just an actual number. It's literally just a variable that represents a regular number, just like num. But right here on the right is setCount. SetCount is a function that is stored in a JavaScript variable that knows how to update this count variable. So this count right here, unlike regular JavaScript variables, if you try to say count is equal to 1 or count is equal to 2 somewhere in your code, it will not register and it will not actually change count. If you want to actually change count, you're going to have to call it setCount2, right? And then whatever you pass into this parameter is what replaces count. And then now right here on the right with this useState 0, this actually attaches them to useState. So this is necessary syntax. And then in these parentheses, they can be empty. But that means that count now goes away and it initializes itself to nothing. Basically, what goes inside of this parentheses is your initializer. So I want to initialize count to 0. I can initialize it to 50, whatever. And you can also do different data types too. You could do a full JavaScript object. You could do a string. In fact, it defaults to a string if you don't give it anything. But I want it to be a number, so I'm going to say 0. And then inside of these setCount parameters, again, is what you're going to update the variable to. Okay. Now again, count acts and functions just like a regular variable, and we can embed it into our code. And just to kind of quickly show you guys how we can update it, inside of this onClick function, I'm now going to set count to actually be count plus 1. So if I do this, I can actually have a counter that infinitely goes up. I didn't need to refresh right there, but if I keep clicking this, it will keep going up, right? Because count displays itself here as 0. We click this button, we call set count, which knows how to update count. It takes count's current value, increments it by 1. Now it becomes 1. And count actually updates here on the screen because since we use useState, React knows underneath the hood to re-render any elements that use count. So it's essentially a sort of selective re-rendering process where normally you have to go and manually re-render this h1 tag because your count variable just changed in default plain HTML and CSS, right? But now with useState, React knows to go and target every single tag that uses the count variable and automatically re-render it for you. It's so useful and so helpful. And it just makes state management and changing variables on the fly so much easier and such less of a pain in React. But that is it for this video. Hopefully you all found this pretty helpful, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you.